So my research is based on personal experience from being a baseball coach of my son's team during Little League years, and then watching both my sons grow up and play baseball on select teams through middle school, through high school, and on through to college. What we've seen there is that there is a tendency for baseball players and parents who push through their baseball players to see them peak maybe a little bit before they need to, with the push to be the best baseball player. We run into overuse injuries and even burnout. My professional interest lies in looking at the Motus Global sleeve as a performance enhancement, possibly through my experience in Dr. Spire's class, Doping in Sports at the University of Texas at Tyler. That's not the main concern of my interest, but piqued my interest when looking at this sleeve as being advantageous to young baseball players and even current baseball players. It further was enhanced the interest and research desire to find out the effects of this baseball sleeve as a colleague and as a person I consider to be an expert in the field of performance enhancement. That would be Bobby Stroop announced through his Accelerated Performance Enhancement Center that he was going to be using the Motus Global sleeve for his athletes. So I figured if Bobby Stroop was taking a look at it, it might be something to look at as an opportunity for prevention of elbow injuries for athletes, especially baseball pitchers. So background is that Tommy John surgeries have become very prevalent in the baseball communities, even in professionals, in minor leagues, and even in colleges and high schools. So it's an excellent surgery that repairs the elbow ulnar collateral ligament, is very effective, has prehab, rehab, and downtime in order to come back to the game, but very effective. What we see in the pitching arm kinetics is that the elbow is affected by the shoulder joint. So the shoulder joint being a larger set of muscles and muscle group pushing the force through the elbow has caused a lot of these elbow injuries. We're looking to find a way to prevent these elbow injuries. It becomes very difficult with baseball being predominantly a year-round sport. So generally they start in January and run through spring and summer, and then again in the fall as well. So what you have is you have young kids who are playing high school ball or little league ball, then they're actually playing in select teams in the summer and select teams in the fall. For the professional baseball player, they are playing January through October. What we've used in the past, preventable-wise, has been pitch count. So we're measuring or writing down, counting each time the pitcher actually uses his arm. So we're looking at basically what I would consider a generic count of how many times they throw the ball. This Motus Global sleeve was introduced to kind of do all of that together. So this is a really great tool that is introduced to baseball players that can be taken to anywhere, to the game, to the baseball field, or even to the backyard for throwing, if you needed to use it for that. Well, what it is a compression sleeve that fits over the arm with this blue sensor that measures data that can be collected on your phone through an app. Again, the advantage is that you're not having to go into a lab setting where we can also collect biomechanical data through a global capture system. So we can take this anywhere and use it anywhere on our athletes. So the purpose of this research topic is to collect that biomechanical data and then to try to create a decrease in the gap of using or collecting the data and actually using the sleeve as a preventable measurement for elbow overuse injuries. So actually we have collected data. The data is out there on the M-Throw, the biomechanical data, but how are we using that and then to prevent overuse injury, and then how are we, is it an indicative factor? If we use the Motus Global sleeve, do we see a decrease in the occurrence of elbow injuries? So the proposed method is experimental method plan with a longitudinal study. So we're going to look at collecting 20 baseball players and splitting them into two groups, a control group of 10 who will use a standard pitch count, an experimental group of 10 who will use the M-Throw sleeve throughout the baseball season. So we will start with a baseline measurement in January of biomechanical data that we collect through the M-Throw sleeve. Then also take a radar gun and a video of fastball, changeup, and curveball pitches from each of these players. And then in January, redo all of these measurements. So we will look at the control group compared to the experimental group. So the control group will use the traditional pitch count from January through October. The M-Throw experimental group will obviously use the sleeve. October, we repeat the baseline measurements and then do a comparison to see what we find. So what we're looking to find in the Motus Global sleeve, these are the data that is provided for us. So we can see the ratio of comparison between the acute versus chronic workload. So you're looking at those immediate loads or those short-term workloads versus long-term workloads and where you are with that. It also measures arm stress or the valgus torque of the elbow. The M-Throw measures arm speed, so we will be able to use that and pitch count, or throw count, the same as pitch count, so that will measure both of those parameters for us. And then it also measures arm slot. An arm slot is the angle of the forearm relative to the ground at ball release. So that's also compared to whether the throw of the elbow at the shoulder joint is coming straight through the arm or if it's a sidearm throw. So a little bit of rotation there. And then we're also looking at max shoulder rotation of the arm, and that is the rotation of the throwing arm relative to the ground. So these are the things that we're going to be able to collect pre and post tests on both experimental and the control group, but that the experimental group will have access to throughout the season as they're using the M-Throw while they're playing. So what we expect to find out is that there should be a significant difference between the baseline measurements of the experimental group, the M-Throw group, versus the control group, which is the traditional pitch counts. We'd like to see a significant difference in those baseline biomechanical data from the M-Throw group versus the control group in the sleeve information. We'd also like to see a significant improvement in the M-Throw players over the pitch count players through the video of their pitches, the changeup, fastball, and curveball. We'd like to see what the correlations are between the individual groups as well as between the experimental group and the control group. So individually between experimental groups, seeing if there's any changes in those variables that are collected from the M-Throw device. Eventually we're looking for the biomechanical M-Throw data gathered to prevent and or reduce the use of elbow overuse injuries. So this significance could help us to gap the literature differences between the use or the gathering of the data and then actually deciding whether or not the use of this sleeve will prevent injury in baseball pitchers. If we can prevent the injury in the baseball pitchers at an earlier age through this M-Throw device, then perhaps we can decrease the need and use of Tommy John surgeries for the baseball players. So in essence, we want to see that using the M-Throw does give a difference, does make a significant difference in those baseball pitchers who are using it for information to prevent elbow injuries. Thank you. And these are my references.